Good afternoon, everyone. This is Zebulon Board of Commissioners meeting, work session, June 11th, 2024. Call this meeting to order. And before I ask for the approval of the agenda, I would like to amend the agenda to add in a closed session to consult with attorney. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Is that going to be number 5, Mayor? Okay. Mayor, that was a closed session?
Yes.
We approve the agenda as amended.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes. Board appointments.
All right, so at the last meeting, I was asked to go back and look at the applications that had been received, and we received 5 applications. 2 of the applicants live in the ETJ, which are David Hughes and Laura Johnson. So what I did is I did a map so you could see where the other 3 were located. You can see there's the ETJ in the orange to the left, and that was where one of the applicants was. A third one was not in Wake County, and a fourth one is also not in, or a third one, excuse me, was also not within our ETJ. So we currently still have David Hughes and Laura Johnson available to be appointed to the planning board as an ETJ representative. We have 1 opening.
I make a motion we appoint David Hughes as our ETJ on the planning board.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, we have a roll vote. Commissioner Baxter?
No.
Commissioner Miles?
Not in favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor.
Commissioner Davis? Motion is not.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Laura Johnson to the ETJ seat on the planning board.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll vote. Commissioner Davis?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Opposed.
Commissioner Harrison?
Not in favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter?
Favor.
Motion passes. Presentation. Mike Clark.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. As you know, the town of Zebulon doesn't have the resources in-house to be able to provide all the services necessary to be able to provide transit services to the citizens of Zebulon. As such, we need to partner with outside organizations such as the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, or CAMPO as referred to it. And they have a partnership with Wake Transit. Tonight we have Shelby Powell, who is the Assistant Executive Director for CAMPO, to talk a little bit about that partnership and some up-and-coming activities regarding Wake Transit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shelby.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you all this evening.
Good evening. Mike.
Okay, is that better? So I'm Shelby Powell. I'm with the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. Zebulon has been a member of the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, or CAMPO, for many years now. Campo has just undergone or is currently undergoing a boundary expansion. So I've just included this map of our new area. We've expanded slightly to the west into Chatham County, as well as slightly further south in Harnett County to include the towns of Lillington and Coates. And so as you can see, Campo does cover a large area surrounding Wake County in addition to all of Wake County. We currently have about a 1.4 million population living in the MPO planning area, and we are currently undergoing the new update and adoption process for our new Memorandum of Understanding to finalize that new boundary. One of the things that Campo does as a service to Wake County in particular is dealing with the Wake Transit program that Mr. Clark spoke about earlier. Just to give you kind of an idea of how the Wake Transit program is set up, we do have an interlocal agreement that governs Wake Transit responsibilities and processes. The two governing boards for the Wake Transit program are Campo's executive board and Go Triangle's board of trustees. So outlined on the screen here is just an overview of the different responsibilities that each of those agencies have as far as the program. Campo does the planning, the long-range planning for Wake Transit. We do the programming. If things need to go into the State Transportation Improvement Program, for instance, Campo takes care of that. We also program the multi-year operating plan and capital improvement plan for Wake Transit. And our board is one of the two bodies that approves the final annual budget, as well as the 10-year revenue picture and budget for the Wake Transit program. Go Triangle as an agency, as far as the Wake Transit program, also does some planning work for the routes that they deliver as part of Wake Transit. They also act as the tax district administrator. So anytime anyone applies for reimbursement using Wake Transit funds, that goes through the Go Triangle agency. They do all the reporting, and they also do budget approval as well. So both boards adopt the same budget every year. Wake County, under the interlocal agreement, acts as an arbiter and as an advisory participant. So if there's some disagreement between the two lead agencies there, Wake County steps in and tries to moderate a solution for that. The way those decisions kind of funnel up for Wake Transit, again, you have the Campo Executive Board and the Go Triangle Board of Trustees at the top of the chart here. We also have the Campo TCC, which is our Technical Coordinating Committee. Mostly anything that comes to our Campo Executive Board, we take it to our Technical Coordinating Committee first for a technical review, and they pass forward a recommendation for items to our Executive Board. In the terms of Wake Transit, we also have what's called the TPAC, which is the Transit Planning Advisory Committee. That is comprised of staff from all the towns in Wake County, as well as RTP and NC State University. So the TPAC is the advisory committee for Wake Transit issues, programs, policies, budgets. They forward up a recommendation. It goes through the Campo TCC and to the Campo Executive Board, and it also goes to the Go Triangle Board of Trustees. Just for your information, Zebulon does have one seat on the TPAC, one seat on the Campo TCC, and one seat on the Campo Executive Board. So that's how you all are kind of directly plugged into that decision-making structure. Other committees are listed under here. We have a program development subcommittee that works on the budget and project development every year. We also have a community engagement subcommittee. They work on making sure messaging is streamlined across the community and that we're taking advantage of all the engagement opportunities that exist. We also have some project-specific work groups that come about dealing with specific projects. All of these things funnel up into reporting to the TPAC, and then from there up to Campo and Go Triangle. So the main crux of what I want to talk to you about today is that we're updating the Wake Transit Plan. The Wake Transit Plan was originally voted on and approved in 2016. We started collecting taxes, the half-cent sales tax that was approved as part of that in 2017, and we started funding new transit services in August of 2017. And the original Wake Transit Plan gets updated every 4 years. It's had one minor update, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and then it's undergoing a major update right now. How have we spent the funding thus far? We've seen about $200 million invested in transit in Wake County since 2017. The bulk of that has gone into more transit services in the county. Almost immediately, we were able to activate additional weekend service on existing bus routes and additional evening services as well. We've also purchased vehicles for the transit agencies across the county, many of those being the newer, cleaner fuel technology buses. We've been developing the bus rapid transit corridors. Those are for higher order, kind of fixed, dedicated route buses, starting in Raleigh and emanating out to the north, south, east, and west. We've also done a lot of capacity building and spent money to kind of increase our internal capacity across the transit agencies and as well as at Campo to be able to administer this new program. We've also invested in bus stops and bus station improvements, as well as some of the countywide programs that I'll talk about as part of the community funding area program. Over the next few years, we have about $350 million budgeted. We currently have a recommended FY25 Wake Transit Work Plan that's coming to the Campo Executive Board at their meeting tomorrow for final approval for fiscal year 2025. But the first few years of Wake Transit have really been spent kind of doing the quote-unquote cheaper end of things, planning, designing, increasing capacity to be able to deliver these major projects. In the next few years, we anticipate seeing these things start to get onto the ground. So the New Bern Avenue Bus Rapid Transit, for instance, which will start in downtown Raleigh and go out east towards Wake Med and out past 440. We expect that to start construction here in the next few months. We also have received federal funding to help move the southern BRT line along. That's a line that goes from Raleigh down to Garner. And then we're beginning or continuing the design work on the western BRT as well, which goes from Raleigh out west to Cary. There's a new shared maintenance facility that will be shared by Go Raleigh and Go Wake Access for the ADA vehicles that they use. The Cary Multimodal Center, which is a new transit center in downtown Cary, and the Raleigh Union Station bus component is under construction now. So some of the improvements, again, that we've made is in the staffing capacity and financial health, making sure that we have adequate staff on board, adequate administrative capacity to be able to utilize the funds, plan for the funds, and efficiently kind of report on the using of the funds, and as well as ensuring that financial compliance that we've set up as part of the program. We've also invested in community-based programs. You may have heard of the Community Funding Area program. That's a program that's part of Wake Transit that allows local towns to utilize Wake Transit funds with a 50% match. Those are not available for Raleigh or Cary. They're meant to support services and programs in the smaller communities in Wake County. We've had 15 grants awarded through that program thus far, and we have some local service on the ground now as a result of that, including in Apex, Morrisville, and Wake Forest. And I mentioned the bus rapid transit projects. Ultimately, we'll have 22 miles of bus rapid transit projects being delivered through the Wake Transit program. The transit plan is organized around what we call these 4 big moves. Those are connecting regionally, so that's bringing people into Wake County and carrying people from Wake County to our surrounding neighboring counties for both jobs and residential purposes, as well as possibly educational purposes as well. The next big move is connecting all Wake County communities. So that's funding bus services, making sure all of the towns in Wake County are connected to the fixed route bus network. Creating frequent, reliable urban mobility is focused on things like the bus rapid transit projects, making sure that the frequent bus services that are built in areas that have high density populations and high usage, making sure that those are being run efficiently and effectively. And then finally, the fourth big move is to enhance access to transit, which makes people closer, or makes sure people are close enough to transit to be able to access it, expanding the network to include service to as much of Wake County residents as we can, as well as making sure the bus stops that we have are comfortable and convenient and easily accessible through a variety of modes. Some specific improvements slated for Zebulon. We have a scheduled in FY26, the ZWX is scheduled to get span and frequency improvements, which means it will be coming more frequently than it does now, and it will also operate earlier in the morning and later in the evening. Go Triangle is in the process of adding additional stops and relocating your park and ride lot, and they anticipate that this improved route is going to serve more of the town of Zebulon. That service is being provided through Go Triangle, so I would expect that they will be, if they haven't already, contacting you to work on that routing and stops and those kind of things. Additionally, we have the Go Wake Access Smart Ride program, which is the microtransit program that's been in place for about a year now. It's been very successful, and it's being continued through the CFA program, which is that community funding area program, starting in FY25 and carrying on forward. We're currently doing public outreach as part of this plan. I mentioned, some of the things that we have done already with Wake Transit funding and some of the things that we have on tap for the next year or so of Wake Transit funding. After that, we have a lot of money that we need to figure out how to spend it. We're trying to meet with the community, make sure that we understand the community priorities for spending those funds, and understand if we're going in the right direction with some of these major projects, and just given new information that we have on some of these projects, are they still priorities for the community or not? I actually brought you all some souvenirs, some flyers with a link to the survey that we have available. Yes. Feel free to blanket the town with those. We'd like to get as much feedback as we can. We're asking in this survey about trade-offs. We can't do everything, obviously, but things we've heard are like the community funding area program has a cap on the amount of money that's in there right now, but that's just a cap that we've placed on there as a community when we developed the Wake Transit plan. So we're hearing the success of that program is really driving people to want us to have additional funding in that program. So things like that, hearing from you all on the survey will help us make those decisions moving forward. We are going to be here in town on Friday the 14th for your Juneteenth concert. There will be a Wake Transit table to talk with your residents and anyone attending that festival concert to talk transit and hear back from you all about what your community priorities are as well. And we'll also be promoting that survey and hoping to get some additional input into that. Just to kind of orient you with how that survey is working, what we have is a list of the priorities. They're centered around those 4 big moves that I talked about, and each participant gets $10 to spend. You can see on the right-hand side the number of dollar signs indicate how much of your $10 you'll be spending on these things, and so what you spend your money on is telling us what you allocate your priorities towards. Again, here's the QR code. This is on the flyer that I just provided for you. And we are interested in getting as much input as we can from across Wake County, particularly from the eastern side of Wake County. When the first Wake Transit plan was done initially, we had 15,000 survey responses, but proportionally fewer from the eastern side of the county. And so we are trying to be out here a little more in person and get some surveys filled out from this end of the county as well. That's all I've got for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
So can we please ask the town to put a link to the survey on our website so that people can, and I would prefer to have it on the front landing page so that it's easy to find. When you explain how Campo works for Zebulon, and you mention things like, oh, we're going to expand bus frequency and increase the number of stops. We have heard that, but we haven't received numbers. And for us, that's rather important. As you are probably well aware with the Smart Ride program, we have the highest usership out of all of the targeted communities. And so clearly that is something that is very, very important to us. I myself, having a child in high school at East Wake, see that that service is being utilized consistently so that children can participate in after-school activities, which we all know help them get into college and further their careers. So can you speak a little bit as far as like how can our citizens make sure that their voices are heard as far as the importance of the Smart Ride program and what we can do on the survey that will reflect that?
Yeah, so two things on that. First, just if you don't already know, for FY25, back before the pandemic, back when fares were being charged on transit services, and as we move towards fares being reinstituted on transit services, we had a thing called the Youth Go Pass program, and that allowed children under the age of 18 to ride the bus for free. That's getting implemented as part of the Smart Ride program starting in fiscal year 2025. So when we return to fares, youth will be able to use that service for free as well. So just FYI, that's in our FY25 work plan.
So as you're talking about implementing fares again, I know that when I've had conversations in the past, it is extremely expensive to collect fares, and especially since we're already spending, as you can see, millions and millions and millions of dollars to actually get these programs moving forward. What is the ultimate return on the investment of having fare collection continue, especially with something like the Smart Ride program, which is targeted towards people who already might be in one of the lower echelons as far as finances?
Yeah, another thing that is, so the return to fares decision is not a Wake Transit decision. That's a decision of the transit operators. So both the City of Raleigh and Go Triangle have determined that they will return to fares starting in fiscal year 25, so starting in July. I think they're going to ease into that program of returning to fares. They're also looking at upgrading technologies to make it easier and more cost efficient to collect fares. It's my understanding that they, as agencies, get about $1 million a year from fares, which does exceed the amount that it costs to run the fare collection systems. But as part of that also, they are developing, so something else that's in our FY25 work program for Wake Transit. It's very exciting. There's a low-income fare program that they are implementing. I'm not sure the details of it yet. They're still working out the details of that, but that will be associated with the return to fares as well for both Raleigh and Go Triangle. The town of Cary runs the Go Cary system. They have decided not to return to fares. So that system is remaining fare-free, much like Chapel Hill Transit has been fare-free for a long time. Of course, they're subsidized by the state through UNC Chapel Hill. So those decisions are kind of outside of Wake Transit. Some of the conversations around that happen through some of those work groups and forums within the Wake Transit program, but the decisions certainly are up to those actually running the transit services. You had another part of your question.
Yeah, sorry, I tend to ask questions with lots of parts. My apologies. The other part was the additional bus stops and expanded routes.
Oh, yeah. So what I talked about today is the big Wake Transit program, Wake Transit plan, which is the 10-year plan for using the Wake Transit funds. Every 2 years, well, every 4 years, so we'll update the Wake Transit Plan, and then 2 years, we'll update what's called the Wake Bus Plan. That's the plan where we identify exactly when those new services are going to be rolled out. So I mentioned in FY26, we have programmed those additional stops and service frequency for the ZWX. That came from the Wake Bus Plan. That's part of the Wake Transit Plan effort. So the kind of front-end work of figuring out where the stops are, putting in stop infrastructure, making sure the stops are accessible by sidewalk and make sure there's lighting and that it's safe and all that kind of thing. That happens in the year before the service is rolled out. So again, Go Triangle is delivering that service, so they should be working with you all on the routing of that and the stop locations, as well as the stop designs. There are some standard kind of stop designs that come along with Wake Transit program, and some instances carry, for instance, will have fancier stops, and they'll pay on top of what the Wake Transit program will provide for the basic stop structures.
And to build on what Shelby was talking about in terms of partnering, we've already met with Wake Transit, and right now we're looking at relocating the existing stop to someplace that's a lot more visible within reasonable proximity of where it is now, having a stop near Gannon and Arundel, having a stop someplace in front of Town Hall, but on the other side of the road, a stop over by Walmart, and then it would go back, stop over by Gannon and Arundel, then a stop over by the current stop, and then into Wendell, and Wendell will have 2 stops, and they'll continue on to downtown Raleigh.
So who is making the decision TIA-wise as to like how that is going to increase our traffic times by putting those stops like at Gannon and Arundel where we're already like severely congested?
Right now it's concept phase, but those all have to be reviewed by an engineer before those stops are created.
Okay. And so I guess, Shelby, my last question that you might be able to assist with, or perhaps Mr. Clark, is that with the amount of funding that Go Triangle receives and the level of service, especially with the Smart Ride program, is there the capacity within Campo, because you just talked about like we're looking for ways to spend our funds, like if what they're doing is providing all of that service and getting $1 million, and $1 million for the town of Zebulon is a lot of money. But when you're talking about Campo and some of these other organizations that have much larger budgets, it's not quite as big of a number to them. Is there a way, and what would the path be for us to work with Go Triangle to maybe do some sort of exchange so that we somehow find that $1 million that they make through collecting fares so that we can continue fare-free, especially with the Smart Ride program?
That's more of a discussion with the Go Triangle Board of Trustees.
Okay.
We have a member of the Go Triangle Board of Trustees on the Campo board, but Campo itself doesn't have a member on the Go Triangle board. So, bureaucracy. We're happy to help convene some of those meetings and discussions if you'd like.
Yeah.
I will say, you're right, the $1 million as far as for a transit agency, a new bus costs upwards of $500,000. So while it sounds like a big return on, fare collection, it doesn't go very far in the world of providing regional transit and transportation. I'll also say the being involved or staying involved as we do the bus plan work, that's another important factor. So the Wake Transit Plan will kind of lay out that big vision. Here's where we want to get to in 10 years. That bus plan's going to come in and say, okay, well, this is going to come first, and this is going to come second, and this is going to come third. And so that's really where the proverbial rubber hits the road, so to speak, for rolling out those bus services. So as you're looking at increasing those. And also, Wake County is the one that runs the Smart Ride Shuttle. Go Triangle does not run that one. That's a Wake County service. And I'm not sure they ever went fare-free, actually, for Go Wake Access. I think they maintained charging fares the whole time. But they will be implementing that youth Go Pass program in fiscal year '25.
And so, just one thing that, because I asked you 47 questions in a row, as far as the survey goes, in order for our citizens to be able to see the most benefit to them as far as like talking about expansion of the Smart Ride program or more stops within the town, like how does that look in the survey itself?
So, it's not all lit up here, but I guess the important one is, so that Connect All Wake Communities big move is the one that funds things like the Smart Ride program. It funds the community funding area program. So having that under Connect All Wake Communities, that second box there says more town-to-town bus service. If what you're looking for is increased service between, say, Zebulon and Wendell and Knightdale, or even Zebulon and Raleigh, that would be the box to check for that. We also have those little circles with the white arrows in them are kind of a recording, just telling you more about what each of those choices are. So that, but the one you're talking about, I think, is that second one. And then the third one under that Connect All Wake Communities is to increase that community funding area pot of funds that's available, which is where things like that Smart Ride shuttle are being funded right now. Another thing that we're talking about through the Wake Transit Plan update is how to graduate projects and programs out of the community funding area program into the larger Wake Transit program, and that would free up more community funding area funds as well to start new services or do new plans or things like that. I mean, we've had several communities take advantage of those community funding area funds to do some transit planning, figure out what might work for you. I don't know if you're familiar with the Morrisville Smart Shuttle, but they have a town-centric kind of microtransit thing that has, I think, 8 or 9 stop locations around town, and you use an app to call the shuttle to it, and you can get on it, and it'll take you where you need to go from one of those stops. So that's kind of a neat thing. And then Apex has used it to start a full-on Apex bus route around the town of Apex. So there's lots of options there, and the planning funds are there available as well to help you all figure out what might make sense for you to invest in.
When you talk about grant funding, would that be one of the areas where we would write a grant to explore perhaps doing that in a similar fashion to what Apex and Morrisville have done? Is that where we would be looking to do those appropriations requests?
It's called the Community Funding Area Program, and Campo does run that program. We have an annual call for applications through that process, and then the applications are kind of judged based on this point system. But there is funding set aside in that program to go specifically to planning projects, and then other funding in the program to go specifically to operating projects. The idea being that whatever you plan for within the program should be able to be supported through the operating side as well if it's deemed to be successful.
And that is one of the reasons that we're also asking for a transportation planner too to be added to our staff, somebody with the experience and credentials to be able to really dig into these opportunities, find those grant possibilities and make them a reality.
Thank you so very much. I don't have any further questions.
Any other questions from staff? Board? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, FY Budget 25, we recognize Mr. Giomi.
Thank you so much, Mayor York. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So I know that, that we don't have any presentation today, and I'm not going to make a presentation, but I just want to do a quick recap. You had a public hearing on June 3rd, to receive public comment on the FY25 budget. Former Manager Moore presented the recommended budget, but also proposed some modifications at that meeting. So to recap, the proposed budget is 28.5 million, which is about 6.2 above the FY23 budget. It has 16 positions in it, and at a property tax rate of 57 and 7 cents pennies. This is the same tax rate that we have used for the last 3 fiscal years, including this. However, because of the reval earlier this year, the revenue neutral rate is 45 and 5 pennies. Now, our town, as you know, is experiencing tremendous growth and is evidenced by population doubling in 5 years. What I was told by our planning director when I came in is if everything comes online with the permitting and development projects in the pipeline right now, we may be looking at an additional 22,000 residents in another 7 to 10 years. I've been a planner for my career, and in big cities, in smaller cities, I haven't had that anywhere before. That's significant. And obviously, as we think about the growth that is to come, but also potential impact on our residents who have, this is the only home they've known. This is, where they live, and this is where they do life. It's very important that we continue to have a budget that takes care not just of residents, but also incoming residents. At the same time, our staff, and I've only been able to spend a week with our staff since I started last week, they have not seen significant increase in the salaries. And in every single category, we are below market in every area. And so, in order for us to remain competitive and to prepare for the expected growth, the budget that gets us there will have a tax rate of 60 cents and some change, which is about 14 cents and some above revenue tax rate. And so going from 57.50 to 0.602 in terms of cents. Now, a finance director will step up at some point if you have questions in terms of how does that rank when it comes to other communities, if you have questions about that. But we're right there in the middle of it. This tax rate will fund all positions. It will put our funds balance in a good place as a community. It will increase starting salaries for our police officers. It will also provide for a 10% salary increase for all employees. That 10%, again, if you look at other proposed budgets right now for jurisdictions, doesn't really get us there, but it starts the journey of getting us there. This tax rate will also set aside funding for splash pad at Whitley Park. Now, that funding may need to be evaluated over time, but at least it will start a process of evaluating the project itself. Bathrooms, I know there's been discussions with regards to bathrooms at Jill Street Park, and there's some conversations right now with DEQ. But again, this tax rate will help us to set aside some fund, or at least allot funding, and also the dugout shade at Zebulon Community Park. This project, of course, will still have to be evaluated, so those numbers may change, but at least it starts the journey for us. So while this means what this means in terms of annual tax bill for a resident annually, if the median household property is about $321,000, what that means is about $86.88 increase annually. I don't know what that is if you break that down by month. It will improve the quality of life of our residents. It will also boost employee morale. I spent some time at Public Works today meeting with some of our employees, pretty much almost everyone except 2 of our employees who are out. Kind of got to hear what everyone does and how they are, what they look forward to with regard to this budget. Also spent some time today meeting with our fire chief as well, and kind of got a sense of his vision for where we're going as a community. I've been spending time with our directors and their respective staff in terms of looking forward into the future. I feel like we have some really good employees here who have stayed here for a while. Can we improve? Absolutely. There are definitely ways that which we can improve, and we continue to make sure that our employees reflect the makeup of our community. But in order to attract the type of employees that we want, and in order to be able to really boost our morale and also improve the quality of life, I think this budget helps us to get there. So this is just a summary. I know the devil is always in the details of anything, but hopefully you've gone through the budget book and you may have questions. What I like to get a sense of from you after the discussion is at least an idea of where you are leaning with regards to this budget. So that when we come back to you, we can bring something to you that not only is satisfactory to you as council, but our community can also feel like it does move the needle for them in terms of the type of town that they want to be. Again, just think about the fact that 5 years ago, this town was roughly about 5,000, maybe. 5,000 residents, roughly, about, or 6,000 or so.
What was?
Or maybe even not. I said 5 years or so ago.
Oh, 5 years ago,
Yeah.
yeah.
And to think 5 years later, we are 11,400 and some. And to think about in another 7 to 10 years, we may be adding another 22,000. So this budget, I think, doesn't get us there, but it starts us getting there. I know in November, you also have a bond referendum that will be coming, and you're going to hear public comments on that next week. All of these things put together continue to actually put Zebulon in that position where we can say that we're not only taking care of our residents, but we're also supporting the staff who will be doing some of the work, or most of the work. So that's what I wanted to recap. I'll hand it back to Mayor York. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
And so as we know, the revenue neutral rate is 46.5 cents, I believe. And so the current proposed budget is 11 cents higher than revenue neutral. And we always have to be cognizant here in Zebulon because relative to other communities in Wake County, our AMI is relatively low. And so we have to be respectful of what folks can reasonably be expected to pay in taxes, especially when it comes to what they expect in return. I had asked the police and then also Public Works to provide the numbers and the difference, not just to get us in a better spot, but I would like for us to be able to solve this hiring issue that we have had for many years. The pay compression issue that unfortunately was something that happened before I came on board and has only gotten worse since. And so for me, I want to make sure, especially in those departments where the community, that they're the most forward-facing, and of course that means because they are helping run our community in big ways. The fire department, the police department, and Public Works. And that is not to say that there aren't other departments that have pay compression, because I think that this is an issue that we have sadly across the board. But we have been told for several years, a couple of times, that, yeah, we've addressed the pay compression issue, only to have it come back before us the next year, and, well, we're working towards the pay compression issue. I want us to be able to allow our employees the ability to at least purchase a home within the town that they work. And currently, I think for a lot of our police and fire and public works, they cannot. And I don't know if the police department and the public works department have the numbers for us as to what it would take to solve the issues so that we can then move forward. But I definitely want to take those into consideration, and I would really love to be able to do that without adding any additional tax rate increase, if possible. And because of that, I think that there are some ways in which we can adjust the budget to help at least get us started, or get us finished, hopefully. We have been presented a municipal center and police department rebuild that you probably are not familiar with it because you weren't here for the presentation, but it basically calls for us to shuffle all kinds of offices and meeting spaces, and to do that, and once that's finished, to immediately do it all again. And to do that in the police department and the and in the municipal center, it has a very high price tag of over $15 million. For me, if we are going to consider doing that, I would much rather us be looking towards building a building. We have the space in this municipal complex for another building, instead of just shuffling around cubicles in a space that itself is not going to get any bigger. And so because of that, I think that we could remove the lion's share of the research money, that I believe it was $270,000, to do a study to see how we can refit town hall and the police department, and not take it out completely, but lower it significantly, so that those funds either get shifted to a firm who can create more meaningful space in perhaps a separate building, as opposed to doing $15 million worth of construction, then destruction, and then more construction. Another area that I think that I would like to suggest to the board is the CIP removal of the $90,000 to replace a bridge that is not really used in Community Park. If it turns out that that bridge needs to be there at some point, I think that we can revisit what it would take to put up a bridge, but it spans about 6 feet, and there are only 2 children, to my knowledge, that live on the street that bridge would connect to. And because of the way our sidewalk system works, there are adequate sidewalks from the end of where Barbie and Arundel connect, that they could take the sidewalk in order to access Community Park. I would rather spend that $90,000 in a way that's going to serve more of the community. Did I miss anything? Okay. And so I guess those are my thoughts. I truly believe that there are areas where we need to increase the pay. I think that if we are going to do a departmental increase, I would rather see the 5% increases done in Public Works, the fire department, and the police department, and then a smaller increment for the remainder of the departments, 2 or 3%. But I still want to make sure that we get fire and Public Works and the police department up to where they need to be. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
On the part of the building, the only thing we kept, wasn't it, the 15,000 and the 17,000 for the cubicles and to rearrange this, not to move anything?
I just want to make sure that now that we have someone new that has his eyes on the budget, that is indeed what we capture, that it is not the $270,000 that was originally presented. So I'm just reiterating, what my concerns were from before. So yeah, I don't have a problem if we're spending $32,000 so that we can make sure that the areas that we have here that need more office space or to have minor adjustments done are done. I don't want us to move forward developing construction plans unless those construction plans are for a new building that's actually going to serve our municipality's needs better.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Davis?
As I listened to the presentation from our interim town manager and Commissioner Baxter, what I just want to make sure that we consider as a board, I do agree with the sentiments that we have to look out for the funding regarding our public works, our fire department, and our police department, and that is not to skip out on any other departments. But I listen to what's coming to mind as we talk about the discussion of number of residents that we currently have and the number of residents that are coming. One of the things that we did not discuss is taking some of these funds or finding a way to use some of the money that we have in our budget towards like a youth center or a senior center, activities that we have for our residents. As we continue to have discussions with our residents, we know that is something that they are screaming. We don't have enough activities. Summer is here. The kids are out of school this week, and it makes me cringe when they ask me what are things that we have, and outside of the great things with not Public Works, Parks and Rec, we don't have much else to offer them. So I would like us to consider that as a board, of figuring out what that looks like to set aside some funds future-wise.
I have thoughts on that. Mm-hmm. And talking to the county commissioners that I know from across the state, not just here in Wake County, a lot of the times when it comes to senior centers and youth centers, that is something that municipalities rely upon help from the county commissioners to help fund. What we have not done with gusto here in Zebulon to date is write a lot of grant funding requests. And what makes that frustrating, at least for me, is that we've got some people that are super great at writing grant funding requests. Sheila Long did a great job writing for the Partif grant. We have, I think, plenty of good data that would indicate the need is here in Zebulon. What we just haven't done is present a request to Wake County commissioners to have that in their budget. And I know that they've got, room in their general fund, so perhaps that can still be something that we go to them, even, that the budget has been established for them. We could still ask, but here is how I look at things when it comes to teen centers and senior centers. If Wake County is able to find the money to create gigantic wooden cardinals in a park in Cary, if Wake County is able to find the funds, and granted, these are coming from different pots of money, but when we're talking about almost $750,000 to increase fan experience at PNC Arena, I think that the town of Zebulon, that is the second fastest growing municipality in Wake County, or in the state rather, in the state, we have a right to make a big ask. And it's not even a big ask when it comes to Wake County dollars. It's a tiny ask. Help us put together a teen center or a senior center or a teen and senior center that are somehow, like two things in one. I think that it could happen, but for us to be able to work on that as a municipality with the budget that we have right now, we would either have to increase taxes significantly or run another bond just to get a teen center off the ground. And we currently have a lot of plans for Parks and Rec that would be addressed with a bond without even considering a teen center. But I couldn't agree with you more, Commissioner Davis. It's something that is really very much needed in our community. And so we've got to develop a plan, and if developing a plan, and I would have to look to our interim for guidance, what would that cost look like for us to develop a plan to be able to go before Wake County and say, please invest in our part of Eastern Wake County, because they haven't done much in the past. We haven't asked in the past. And in addition, I think that we should certainly start a federal grant appropriations request writing campaign, or at least figuring out the areas where we would like to ask the federal government for some funding. I have received phone calls from Deborah Ross's office saying, why have you guys not asked for money? We have gotten money for many of the other, like everybody else has gotten money for, but you never ask us. We need to ask. And so we pay taxes not just to the municipality, we pay taxes to Wake County, and we pay federal taxes. And so I think that it's okay for us to say, make an investment in us and who we are. So.
No, I hear you. I 100% hear, and I do understand exactly what you're saying. And it is something that we do need to ask. It is something that should be given without a question. So we would need to sit there and figure out what that looks like for us. But I just want to ensure that as we are looking at this, at our budget, I'm not asking for a large amount where we need a bond, but something to even set aside. Doesn't have to be a full-on youth center, but if we have buildings here that are not being utilized, just what does that look like that we can provide something?
So I think that what that might look like, and I would have to lean on Chief Perry a little bit for some some guidance. But once we are able to break ground and build out the new fire station, we are going to still have ownership of the current fire station. And I know that even back when former Mayor Bob Matheny was still with us, and acting mayor, that was one of the things that he thought might work, is transforming the fire station or the EMS station, which we also have ownership of, to be able to use that in some capacity. So we do have some buildings, and some of that might need to be used for office space for a little while, but I think ultimately, once the new fire station is built, we're going to have some room.
Are you asking basically for funding for specific programs potentially geared to youth? Would that suffice what you're asking for?
I don't have a specific program at this time. I just want us to have a discussion of what that looks like. Again, it's just simply that we don't have
Correct.
anything. So, even talking about with engagement with our youth of what they need, the services that they want. Like I said, we don't have anything outside of Parks and Rec, especially for our youth ages 13 and up. We have the Boys and Girls Club, but they age out. So what do we do for those? What do we talk about internship program, what that looks like for some of our youth? Like I said, just a small resource center, a small youth center, something for them to go to, something for them to have. Again, we're going to have residents to come, so this isn't a discussion for just this fiscal year, but what that looks like going forward.
I think one of those areas that we have to look at as well as expanding the hours of our community center, where it's actually a community center, where it's not closed on the weekend, different things like that. I think that's going to play a big part too as well.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're in budget season, and we're doing budget talks right now. So this is the right time to discuss these matters. But also, we need to think what's that going to look like in the future? If we're going to build it, let's build it for 30 years from now. What's our projected, population in 30 years? So I would rather build it right once than have to come back in 5 years and say, oh, that was absolute, even though we knew that we were going to have 25,000 more people, we built this center to accommodate 150 youth. So, I'm fine with setting aside some money for a study to see what that would look like. And I don't know what those studies cost. I mean, I'm sure that somebody on staff has an idea, because I feel like we've done studies galore in the past few years. And so we probably have a pretty good idea of what it would cost to at least run the study and do some public input, like a public input survey, and get that out.
I agree with you. Just a study that would give, even like I said, the opportunity for us to talk to the youth of what that looks like for them. But we have talks about splash pad, right? But we know those, again, that's something towards our younger generation.
You know what? I will be at that splash pad.
I know you would. But I know I'm
all the
a parent
time.
of a 16-year-old, almost 16-year-old, and a splash pad is not, the most thrilling thing to talk about. And that's not to put it down and say that we don't need it. That's something exciting, but let's put aside some funds that have the ability, like I said, to do a study, to maybe talk with youth. I know whenever we talk about setting aside funds, we talk about staff and having to pay man hours for that, right? So setting aside funds to have the ability to engage with our community and with the youth of what it is that they're asking for and what they need. So if Commissioner Miles is asking something specific, I don't feel like I have the right to give that specific if I haven't engaged with them of what it is that they want.
I think the point of view is just to see what it looks like to you, just kind of saying, setting those funds aside where we know we're making an intentional effort, putting our money in a time where our mouth is at what we're saying, just to back it up. That's what I get you at.
I think it would be super interesting ask of Wake County, but I think it could easily be done. They have this program that they use called the AVID program, and all of the students have to participate. They get graded in their seminar class, which for those of you that don't have children that are high school aged, it's pretty much like study hall, or what we used to know as study hall, but they call it seminar. They have things that they learn. They have activities that they have to perform online using this AVID program. They get graded for it, and then the remainder of their time can be used to catch up with their studies or to, involve themselves in a club like drama club or chess club. And
May I speak? Are you through?
no, I'm not through,
When
but
she's finished, we'll continue.
I'll be done soon, maybe.
Go ahead.
So I think that maybe we could ask Wake County to help us with like an engagement for students of those ages. Okay.
Commissioner Clark?
So let's get back to the budget. So on these things that y'all have talked about, you want to add these into the budget now? You want to make the changes now? Or is this just looking forward? I mean, 'cause if we need to make those changes, then we need to do that. If you want to add some things to
I'm
the
sorry,
budget.
did you think I wasn't discussing this for the budget purpose?
No, I know you're spoken, but do you want to add it into this budget? It's not in here. So do we need to, just, what items you want to add to our budget?
So, just a quick reminder that the existing budget, it expands youth programming, and also talks about transitioning the community center to be more available. So, I mean, you already have something in the existing budget that addresses some of this.
And our Parks and Rec Master Plan also includes a multi-purpose
Yes.
facility program. I'm not sure if that multi-purpose facility will be
It could
catered
be.
more towards youth and teens. But I did see in the budget that we have an expansion of youth programs, which I would assume that Parks and Rec could make that expansion of those programs directed more towards our older youth, because that it is a need for our community. And that the multi-purpose recreational facility that is in the Parks and Rec Master Plan is going to be something that will be also catered towards, or maybe not all the way catered towards them, but gives a good, percentage of that usage to our teens.
I believe it could be designed, I don't know if Sheila is here, but I think when you have a multi-purpose rec center, it could be designed in such a flexible manner to address young people and residents at varying ages and demographics.
Okay, all right.
But
Yeah, I
then
don't think
again,
that
it's
the
in the
youth-
master plan, but that is not in the budget in terms of the master plan. But
Right.
what's in the budget is expanding what you have today and funding the programming, which could also address some of the issues.
Sure.
I personally don't think you need to add any additional funding to study that if you already have it in the budget to expand that, and maybe you spend this current fiscal year to see how that works.
So we could then just direct Parks and Rec to use some of that youth expansion as a community outreach effort to try and understand what our youth want. Because unfortunately, what I have found is that sometimes it's hard to know what the youth are going to be engaged in. Several times in the past couple of years, we've done things that I thought were going to be incredibly popular, like bringing a video game bus so that kids could get on the bus and play video games. And it was my kids and 3 other children that showed up. So I would rather us do it right instead of just do a whole bunch of things and hope that we hit upon one thing that works for our community. And so, listen, I am not someone that usually is like, let's do a study. But I think that this kind of warrants setting aside a study. And if that money comes from what's already in the Parks and Rec budget, I'm fine with that.
I was not asking for us to put additional money in. I was asking us to look at the current budget that we
Yes.
have to figure out where those funds were at.
I'm going to recognize Parks and Rec Director Sheila Long, so she can speak more to that, but I don't want to speak for her. But I do know that the current budget has some funding request.
And Sheila, can I ask, as you get ready to speak, with the Youth Advisory Council that the mayor's Youth Advisory Council, is that is what, when we mentioned it earlier, is something that I thought whenever you get to the point where we can bring that back, they would be, I'm not sure how we, form that council, but they would be the voice, the study. They would be the ones to give us direction, because, like Commissioner Baxter said, like, we don't want to keep bringing buses or keep bringing stuff that they don't want. So my hope with engaging the youth and providing that youth advisory council was so that they could engage their peers, and they could be the leading ones to tell us, or to tell the town what it is that they're looking for and what it is that they want, instead of, us just putting on programs that they may or may not want or show up to. So that was kind of, what I was trying to go for with that, but, please advise.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been looking over really the past year to 2 years over ways that middle and high school, that teen age, is a hard age to reach and keep engaged. And so we've been looking at what other Parks and Recreation departments have been able to successfully implement to create those types of youth advisory committees or boards that are able to successfully implement the programs. And in that, also looking at, we have done some one-off things, and we did that with the intent of trying to establish some relationship and get some feedback on what things to offer. We had some success in some of them, some not as much, but that's okay. We know what they don't like when we try that. But it is necessary for the teens to give us that feedback on what it is that they're looking for. The budget before you included some part-time funding for us to bring someone in that can help us, not just with something like this, but also with just some of the civic group coordination, because we just have a lot of civic groups that look for involvement from the Parks and Rec department, and that is an opportunity for us to also, because a lot of those youth or civic groups are serving youth that would benefit from this. And so the proposed budget does include bringing in someone part-time that can help us focus on that civic engagement, but we could also use that opportunity to help establish that youth advisory board. I don't think that the format that we formally had is going to get us where we need to be. It turned out to be more of a civic group versus a advisory group. And so we don't want to go that route because there are civic engagement opportunities in the schools and things of that nature. So while there could be civic service projects within what is created, we really need that advisory. And so the budget does have room to start that process. It's going to be very important that we go into the schools. We continue to do that. We continue to go to the Boys and Girls Club. We get that feedback. But I have shared, and it's no secret, that the community center was never funded to actually operate like a community center. And it's really not laid out to do that either, as far as the way it is structured. We were very fortunate at the time that we got the community center. We had a very small budget. You were going through budget constraints. So it was an opportunity that the town used, and it has served us well for a long time. But we were a town of 4,600 people when that community center was built. And we are still, that is the only facility that we have now as a town of 11,000. And so we have a lot of people that have conflicting interests. Your master plan recognizes all of those needs. You do have a multi-purpose facility that is identified in your master plan. It could be a project that you want to move up. We have to talk about a bond specific to Parks and Recreation for a lot of these projects to move forward. Maybe that's a project you move up. It also recognizes that downtown, when the fire department vacates the fire station, if that continues to move forward, that facility was recognized as a possible recreation facility. You still have time. It didn't define exactly what it could be used for, but you would want to work with the community to identify how do you best use that recreation or that fire department. Maybe there's a use that's not recreation related that comes up in the coming years. But then when you build the new multi-purpose recreation facility, it will open up the community center, which how you use that community center and what you do with that in the future, does it become a senior center? Does that become your teen-focused facility? There are a lot of opportunities that you'll have. I think those are very important conversations, and I'm really excited to hear that it's important to y'all because the current community center strains us in so many ways when we provide service to our citizens. And so I do think it's a top priority, and I think we have a lot of opportunities in front of us. We need to be very intentional as we plan moving forward with working with our community, but thinking about everything we want out of a community center, how we want it to operate, when we want it to be available, and so that we can properly design it to be able to meet those needs.
And I'll also say that we need to explore something that Commissioner Baxter brought up outside of the budget, where what's Wake County doing for other municipalities? What are those grant funding opportunities that are out there that target community centers and recreation amenities that are not budgeted for but could really help? And I know they've done that for other communities, whether it's Guilford or Mecklenburg, and I think it's something there that
Brunswick
we can
County
explore.
seems to be building a senior center every other year. Brunswick County. So I think that it's something that for a long time we didn't have even on our radar, asking big things of the county. But now I think it's appropriate for us to start considering them kind of, we pay Wake County taxes and they're not a little bit. And we don't get, I think, the same level of service that other communities get with help from Wake County. And so I think it's just time for us to start acting. And I think that we will need to go through an update to the Parks and Rec master plan so that we can really identify how things have changed for us, even in the few years since it was first approved, because I think that there are some big changes that we may need to consider. Having that Whitley Park property is really a huge opportunity for us, and we've got other ones, but I'd like to see us work to update that master plan. And in the not Parks and Rec realm, but
That might have cue to leave.
maybe, I would like us to set aside a $20,000 placeholder so that as we reach out to the community and explore what even a small short parade might look like, one that maybe doesn't hit lots of different NCDOT roads, but can first off be the first step to bring a parade back. I do expect that we could lean heavily on the community. I've already had a lot of folks say that they would love to help be on a committee. But I think that whether it moves forward or not, whether we are able to start it and get it going, I think that we should at least set some funds aside to make it happen. And it can always just go back into the general fund if it turns out that that's not something that we can feasibly accomplish.
I like that.
Okay. Anyone else's thoughts on that? I like it. You like it? Okay, cool. In addition, I would like for us to set aside, and I don't know what it's going to take, but our website is still screwed up 6 ways to Sunday. You cannot adequately use it on a mobile device, and the number of calls that I get from frustrated citizens saying that they don't know where to find anything anymore, or that when they go to try to find something, they think it's where it was housed, either the links are broken, like, we've got to get this figured out. I feel like almost our old website served us better than the new one does. Oh, well, I believe that fully, actually, because I used to be able to get on my phone and find the stuff that I needed, and now I can't, and nor can other citizens. So I'd like to set some, I don't know what it's going to even be, or maybe it's just a budget adjustment when we get it figured out, but that is something that we still need to address. And it might just be a phone call to the web provider and telling them that they got to make the changes. But if there is if there's a dollar amount attached, maybe that's something that we just do along the way out of general fund. But I just want to make a statement that that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I'd just like to piggyback off what's already been said before, the pay adjustment for your public works, police, and fire. Ensure that we get those guys up to standards. That's very important right now. So we can kind of address it now and kind of like get them where they need to be amongst their peers.
Commissioner Harris?
I just wanted to also make mention to the increases across for our departments. I know that our board, we have been very passionate and voiced a lot about how we feel about equity and inclusivity as it relates to so many different things. So I just want to ensure that, as we all are, we know that we're the second largest growing municipality in North Carolina. We know that, we have residents moving in every day, and that while our police, fire, and public works are extremely, you guys know how I feel about each department across our staff, I just want to ensure that when we go to make these decisions that we are being equitable and we are looking at all of our employees, because each department that works for our town, they're growing, our town is growing, our citizens are growing, but because we are so passionate and we are so, we know the urgency of providing an equitable pay across the board for all of our employees. I just want to make sure that we take into account how each department plays a role in what every other department does. And so in understanding that, I know safety and putting lives on the line is like, it's putting lives on the line. I can't speak to how important that is. I just want to ensure that we are looking at the full scope and we are taking into account the concern, the passion, all of the things that we have all discussed in the past and moving forward as it relates to being true, equitable, fair, and inclusive to all of our employees.
Any other comments?
Mayor, if I could maybe share some numbers with you, maybe that will help with regards to employee compensation. So my understanding, doing some research myself, is that there's only been one cost of living adjustment for employees since 1996.
So what?
Only there's only been one cost of living adjustment for employees since 1996. That was in FY23, and that was at 2% cost of living adjustment. And when you compare that with neighboring community, Nightdale had 3% this fiscal year. That's what they're proposing. Garana is proposing 3%. Archer Lodge, 3%, and Wendell are 3%. That's just the cost of living, not even the merit pay. I also found that when we compare ourselves with, right now, the current budget in front of you has 3% market rate adjustment for all employees, 3%, that's good. But when I put those 3% numbers on employee pay, it still takes us below neighboring cities and county. And something to just think about as you have that conversation. We definitely, and I think I'm hearing that from all of you, that we need to address the vacancies in the police department. That's absolutely, I think, something we want to do. I think I'm hearing that. But I also had a reference to public-facing employees. And so how you define public-facing employee? Someone who works for Parks and Rec may also be public-facing, as well as somebody who works in the customer service section. And so that's why it's very important that if we're going to address the merit pay as well as the cost of living adjustment, we not only address our public safety employees, but also think of how we address comfortably non-public safety employees to achieve that equity. I don't know what that number is in terms of tax rate. I think I can work with our director, but I just want to make sure that you have me here as an interim, and I want to make sure that when I finally move on, we leave these town employees in a really good place, that they are proud to work for Zebulon. And I believe they are. But I also want us to not have to lose them to other municipalities who are offering higher. That would be and these are based on some of the research that I've had to do between yesterday and today in terms of those numbers.
I think as we talk about the pay for our staff, it's saying that we're not putting anybody over the other. It's just that I think I know for Public Works, and kind of looking at their numbers, those guys have definitely kind of not gotten the pay increase that they needed. So now I think as we keep using the word intentionally, that we have to intentionally address those issues now. And I think now is the time that we have that opportunity.
I agree.
And that's it. But I say agree across the board. We take a look at our staff all the way.
I don't disagree, but I do think that,
Yeah.
we do. I'm not going to see an accountant pull someone out of a burning vehicle, but I am absolutely going to see someone risk their life in the police and fire department to do that for us. They are doing other good work, but their work does not entail jeopardizing their lives, and they're being severely underpaid. I want to get everybody where we need to be, but this budget does not account for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? So there's been a number of concerns. I'm assuming that the board wants some numbers back from the staff concerning some of those issues that's been discussed tonight. What that will look like as far as an alternative to what's already budgeted. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
So we will need to schedule another work session at some point.
Mayor, if I can make a suggestion, you have a public hearing on the 18th already scheduled for the bond.
So are you suggesting we can have a follow-up before, after the bond?
It would be after the
After,
public
okay.
hearing because we can't move the time of the public
6
hearing.
p.m. Okay.
Yeah, so the public hearing would be first.
And so a work session recap, and you'll come back with
Yes, we will.
numbers and ways that we can make it work?
Yes, we'll come back to you with alternatives
Okay.
based on what I've heard today,
Okay.
both for public safety and non-public safety. But you also, Commissioner Baxter made a couple references to other things that I'd like to know the pleasure of the board. There was a reference to a $90,000
The bridge.
for a bridge.
That can be taken out. In my opinion, that can be taken out. That's for me.
I don't know, maybe that's another area where we can provide, that's a CIP thing, and we can give you some ideas around that. It is also a reference to a $270,000, but I think Commissioner Clark asked some questions with regards to, is it everything or some pieces of?
So the money, to my understanding from the first and only presentation that we've received on it, was that money was going to be used for design purposes for this $15-16 million 3-year plus project.
Okay.
And so I would rather us set aside, you take that money out and set aside, I don't remember us coming up with those numbers, Beverly, but I think that they're not unfair numbers. I think you said, what was it, $15,000 and $17,000, so that the police department as well as the municipal center can get, the equipment that they need to be able to house any additional employees until we really think about, are we going to spend that money that would have gone to rehabbing the 2 buildings to building one larger
Okay.
building on this complex?
Okay. And if I may, you with this, such as you think, and as we prepare to come back to you next week with some rates, and we're doing this, and I'm also mindful of what other municipalities are doing when it comes to their tax rate above revenue neutral. So we're looking at municipalities from Apex to Cary to Wendell to Nightdale, but also wanted to make sure that we're being comparable when it comes to that. So when we come to you in the next work session, we try to give you alternatives, but also compare ourselves with our neighbors. And I think that's very important from an employee point of view, but also even from residents' point of view. But I get the message.
And we've done quite a few salary studies, so all of that information should be readily available. I know that with especially the emergency services departments, sometimes that changes a lot very quickly. Just it's the nature of things, but I think that you have the salary study information to be able to do those comparisons.
I have a market study from April, May of this year. Let's just, as a summary of it, is that we're significantly below market. And when I say significantly capital below market. And I'm not sure that this budget can address all of that, but we can start that conversation. And it may be that if the budget that you ultimately adopt doesn't address it, we may come back to you mid-year when we're 6 months into the budget and see how we can address some of those inequities at that point in time, if what you adopt doesn't address everything. Just something to be mindful of. So I'm throwing all of that out there. And we'll be happy to have that global conversation with you next week.
Could we have maybe get an idea of what it would cost us to go ahead and work on the other departments to bring their money up.
I don't know if, Bobby?
You mean above the
Yes.
3% that's already going to
To
be
bring them
across
up
the
to
board?
where they need, where all these others are going to be, at the rate they need to be. So it would just be nice to see.
I think it was shared last week. If we did theoretically a 10% across the board increase, I think it was 650,000. Yeah,
All departments?
that'll be a cross board 10% market adjustment across every position that we have. It will be about I think it was 650, equated to about a 2.6 cent on the tax rate is what it came out to be.
But, oh, I'm so sorry. But not every department, from what we were originally presented, needed the 10%. And I'm assuming that that would be 5% and then the 5% merit. Or are you talking about 10% and then an additional 5% merit, so 15% increase in salaries?
Correct.
And that would bring them up to where it needs to be, or closer.
I think
Closer.
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 Yes.
Okay.
That will actually make us better competitively. But again, I know that you're being mindful of tax rate and you don't want to create a burden for residents, and that's the same goal that we have. And so we'll have to strike a balance somewhere here, which is why I'm saying if at the end of the day you adopt a budget that doesn't meet all of those goals, we can come back mid-year and address the rest 6 months into the budget.
And I don't know if what you have received was pulling the assistant clerk out of the budget, but we had asked for some positions to be removed. And so that will help, I think, because those salaries could be distributed. So if you could go back and look at what we had talked about position-wise, I think that would be helpful. I'm not going to die on the sword of not raising our tax rate, but I would really, really, really love if we could avoid doing that since we're already going so far above revenue neutral.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Know if Zebulon First Baptist still or plans to host Camp I Can? Because I know at one point in time they did house Camp I Can there. I would hate to not repair that bridge or not have that bridge if they are hosting the camp. And I know we made mention there's like 2 kids that lives on that end of the street, but I know there are a lot of grandparents that have kids that come over and all of that. So I would hate to not include the bridge in it if we don't know for sure how much is being utilized, and if that church who we've been in partner with that is hosting their camp, because they hosted it a few times. So I'm not sure if they're still hosting that camp every summer. So I would like to, I don't want to just take that out if they're hosting it, if they're using it, or if they need it.
Then, in speaking with the pastor, I met with the pastor about 2 weeks ago. I think myself and Commissioner Davis, we sat down with the pastor. They don't utilize it. Basically, what now they have their lawn care guide just kind of cuts back there as a courtesy, for common courtesy. It hasn't been used in so long, and they haven't even begun talks with the town of Zebulon at all. He would like that conversation to be had, so they would want to work better, work on the relationship with the town as well in that process before we go and improve that bridge. So they were okay with not moving forward on it right now, and potentially have future conversations with the town of how that looks like and what that looks like. One of their biggest concerns was, okay, we know that area is about to develop. Potentially that could become where people are parking in their parking lot, doing service, different things like that, and blocking them out. So that was a big concern when we developed back there. So that was a big concern.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Does the staff have what they need for the next work session?
Yes, we do.
And could you bring that to us in either a spreadsheet form or in something in our packet where we can see the differences of the numbers with, you know, the current tax rate and what the ideas could be for us to not raise the tax rate, and then what we would be able to accomplish by raising the tax rate, and then by how much? If we could get those 3 items so that I can like actually put my eyeballs on a piece of paper, that would be so very helpful for me.
And what we can accomplish maybe in 6 months and maybe revisit another 6 months.
Yep, that
Because
would be
I don't think we're going to be able to get all of this stuff in this budget. So I think that's a good idea, to see what we can do in 6 months. And then
Awesome.
come back and revisit mid-year, see where we stand.
So also all 16 positions we're good with as well, as far as in the budget.
Well, when they come back,
We'll be able to
have
address
it, but then, you know, if there are adjustments, then that's fine.
Sounds good.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Thank you. Do we need a motion to do work session for June 18th?
Yes, sir.
So I
Okay.
would like to move to add a work session after our bond hearing,
Public
after our
hearing.
bond public hearing on June 18th.
6 o'clock.
Well, 6 o'clock is when the bond hearing is, so whatever it is following that, I'm not sure how long the hearing would last, but do you need a time? No? Okay.
So we have a motion. Is there a second? Discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you to staff for helping us crunch these additional numbers so that we can get everybody to where they need to be, or at least a heck of a lot closer.
Okay, before we go into closed session, want to take a 10-minute recess.